may have heard about the big changes that are coming to Michigan's Medicaid program. Beginning April 1st, those seeking Medicaid will be subject to eligibility rules that have been on hold since the start of the pandemic. What does that mean for your car insurance or a personal injury claim? Well, for that, we turn to Tom Sinas from Sinas James Law Firm. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. So let's start with a general overview of Medicaid, what it is and how the rules are changing.
Right. So at a very general level, of course, Medicaid is a health insurance program that is utilized by people of limited means. And it has become over the years the largest form of government subsidized health insurance. I believe there are more people enrolled in Medicaid now than there are in Medicare. And generally speaking, before the pandemic, the concept was this: in order to be eligible for Medicaid, you had to show that you made an income of a certain amount or less, or perhaps also that you had assets of a certain amount or less. That was commonly called eligibility testing. You had to show that you were eligible to receive Medicaid. Well, during the pandemic, that eligibility testing was put on hold, with the idea being, I think, that we didn't want people to lose their health insurance coverage during the pandemic. What's happening now is that beginning in April of this year, this eligibility review process is going to start again. It will take place over the course of many months, but people who have been receiving Medicaid will now need to, as they did before the pandemic, show that they are in fact eligible to receive Medicaid insurance by way of proving their eligibility in terms of income and assets.
So how does the Medicaid issue deal with when it comes to, say, car insurance?
Yeah, that's a strange one, right? You wouldn't think there'd be any connection here. The reason there is a connection is because back in 2020, also around the start of the pandemic, just coincidentally, people in Michigan could start choosing no-fault insurance coverage for amounts less than unlimited. As I've said to you before, I always recommend that people choose unlimited, but people could make a choice for something less. And one of the lowest levels of no-fault coverage that people could choose was one that was tie-barred to their enrollment in Medicaid. And it said that people who receive Medicaid could choose a no-fault benefit amount of just $50,000. Remember, no-fault benefits are the things that pay people's medical expenses after a car crash. Well, the law said for those people who are enrolled in Medicaid, they can choose a $50,000 no-fault coverage level. So what I think is going to be happening here is that there are estimates that hundreds of thousands of people in Michigan may no longer be eligible for Medicaid. And if they're no longer eligible for Medicaid, then they will not be allowed to pick that limited no-fault option going forward. And so I think you're going to see people choosing, by virtue of the fact that many are less eligible for Medicaid, there'll be less people choosing that Medicaid no-fault option.
So that's auto crashes or auto insurance. Now let's talk personal injury claims. Does the Medicaid change affect those?
Yeah, it very well may. And people who have a potential personal injury claim or settlement should be aware of this. Remember, before COVID, people's eligibility for Medicaid was measured both in terms of income, but sometimes in terms of assets as well. So if someone came into a cash settlement on a personal injury case, that the receipt of that money could disqualify them from the Medicaid insurance that they'd been receiving. Well, during this period of time where the eligibility testing was suspended, that type of analysis was not being conducted because the eligibility testing was on hold. But now with this eligibility testing being resumed, people who have received a settlement or may receive a settlement need to be mindful of the fact that the receipt of that money could disqualify them from Medicaid. And so they need to plan for that ahead of time. There are ways under the law where people can protect money that they receive from a settlement into a special kind of trust. And if the money is put in that kind of trust, then the people may be able to continue to receive the Medicaid program, but it has to be done carefully and it has to be done before the person receives the settlement. So people need to be mindful that this change in in Medicaid eligibility testing, this resuming of the testing very well could have an effect on their ability to receive Medicaid benefits if they come into something like a settlement from a personal injury case.
Okay, many people might not put those together when you hear about these Medicaid changes, how it might affect your auto insurance, how it might affect your personal injury claim. And of course, the man with the answers, Tom Sinas from Sinas Dramus Law Firm. Thank you so much for the info. How can people get a hold of you?
They can find us online at sinusdramus.com. They can shoot us an email at info@sinusdramus.com or give us a call at 616-301-3333.